Chisa.
Lanie.
So let's talk a little bit about the subject, how it came to be. Originally it was a play and then you made it into a screenplay. So let's talk a little bit about its genesis to where it got to tonight, which people just saw at the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival, our encore screening. So thank you so much for joining us and for watching this evening. We really appreciate it. I'm Lanie Zipoy. I'm director of the film, Chisa Hutchinson, screenwriter. And then we have two of our cast whom I'm sure you recognize, Carra Patterson, who played Marley, and Nile, Bullock, who played Malcolm Barnes. So back to you, Chisa. Let's talk a little bit about the subject and how it began.
It began as homework in grad school. I studied dramatic writing at NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, and I concentrated in playwriting. My playwriting professor, Renner Groff, is the one who saw me through this script. And I love her for it. And it also happened to be a commission. I got a commission from Atlantic Theater Company to write that script. And it wasn't until one of the like bazillion, readings of the play that someone approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever considered turning this into a screenplay?" And I was like, no. Not really, because the play is it's very different. It takes place in one unit set, one location, Phil's house, and we never venture out into the world with him or with Jess or Malcolm or and every Malcolm I think only appears on screen until that one scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Can we hold just 1 second? Because I just want to make sure that people can actually hear us.
Oh, yeah, that's.
I see that we have some people there watching, I think, but I just need to double check. Let me ask Galia because she is probably tuning in.
Hi, Galia.
Galia. She's the best.
Lenny, I'm gonna need a copy of that poster.
Yes, I can get you a copy of this poster, or we have about 5 or 6 different designs with you and Jason. I don't know why. I mean, this one's kind of the saddest because that's a pivotal moment where he's holding you. So, but yes, we can get you one. Chisa has the one with him as a videographer. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, I'm just double checking. Thank you everybody for your patience. All right. All right. Oh, all right. Thank you, Darren. We appreciate it. Darren said he can hear us. All right. So continue about the script, grad school, believing in it, et cetera, taking it to being a film.
Yeah. Nick Flint, who is a director, came to see a reading and was like, "You should make this a screenplay." And he actually optioned the script first. But in the middle of working on it, he went and had a baby, which, changes your priorities. So it just sort of sat on a shelf for a really long time until you emailed me asking if I had any screenplays that I could send you. And yeah.
Yeah.
That.
I think my lucky stars that we had worked together, many years before that and had crossed paths and knew each other. And that when I reached out to you, you sent me something that was so terrific and that blew my mind and that I couldn't forget. Like I couldn't put it down. And then, I had asked a lot of people and read a lot of scripts. 42, I think was the number. And this was the one that I just kept coming back to because I don't know, it has so much heart and depth. and characters, and I knew that actors would want to play these roles because they're so, I keep using the word delicious, but there's just so many layers to them. Like it's not just one thing for any of the characters. And I thought, okay, this could be really well cast. And then also thought working with you would be a dream, and it was. So that all of those things came true. So just, I need to give actually, as we're talking about the cast, a shout out to our casting director, Destiny Lilly, who talk about another dream to work with. And I'm going to tell a little random story. So tonight I'm going to ask questions of Chisa, our actors, Carra and Nile, and then I'm going to give some anecdotes about the film, sort of a little behind the scenes that maybe you don't know. But I luckily met Destiny Lilly at my friend Doug's Oscar party over a decade ago. Yeah, one of those things, I just thought she was bright, fun. I knew she worked in casting. And then I was working on producing Jitney in Brooklyn for its Brooklyn premiere almost a decade ago. And who does not love Jitney? It's amazing. She cast it for me, did a great job. We had a really strong cast. It's a beautiful piece. And then fast forward, many years later, my friend Doug writes me, same Doug from the party, and says, hey, Jitney's coming to Broadway. We need to go see it. And then lo and behold, we go and see it. Carra is in the play. And just so good. I mean, talk about tour de force. I'll never forget that production, and it was so great, and you were so wonderful in it. And so Carra also came in and she did audition, and I will never forget her audition either. It was the most Marley audition you could ever have. I mean,
That's great.
It's so true. You walked in and it was so great. And she was so perfectly dressed even that we asked our costume designer if we could use that outfit. She came into audition. So the first outfit you see of Carra in the cafe is her own clothing. And so she comes in and she's reading the cafe scene, which is very sexy. And I mean, she comes in and like puts her seat like 2 inches from the reader almost. Like it's so close. Even he was like, okay, I feel the difference here. It was amazing to watch his eyes bulge. And then you did the scene and then we're like, oh yeah, that's Marley, totally Marley. So we're blown away. So I'm just curious, Carra, what did you find in working on Marley? What did you unpack about that character?
Well, when I'm approaching audition material, I'm like, what's the essence of this scene? What do they really want, from this character? And it was beautifully written, and you could just kind of see Marley's angle. I could see Marley's angle without even reading the entire script. I just read the audition sides first. And I was like, oh, I think I got what she's about. And then obviously I read the rest, and I was able to put a clearer picture together. And I was like, I do carefully obsess over my audition outfit. So it's great when, because everything is thoughtful. And I think I actually had multiple auditions that day in the same building. And I remember doing full costume changes for each one. So I left right out of that one, changed, and did another theater audition, I think. But I just loved Marley's boldness. And I really wanted to capture that intimacy between her sort of invading his personal space. And if there's a way to do that safely in an audition by just pulling a chair closer to the reader. I've also been a reader in a lot of auditions. And I know you get excited sometimes as a reader, especially when you're doing several auditions, when something different happens. So I just wanted to offer something, and I was glad that it went over well, because you never really know. Every room is different. So this is one that I lucked up, and you kind of take a stab and just hope that your idea of the character is what the creative team also sees. And so this was one that was a happy meeting of the minds. So so I was excited that it worked.
Yeah, it was definitely a happy meeting of the minds. And my best childhood friend, who is not watching right now because she got a late start on watching the movie, but she just texted like 25 minutes ago, I hate Marley and Phil. Like, so, that's the best praise, I think, and in truth, that scene with you, Jason and Anabelle, that's in the kitchen, that was actually the first scene I showed anybody from the movie.
Oh, wow.
Because when it came through, when it was first just put together as an assembly, just as an idea of what the movie could be, it just was already so wonderfully put together, and the three of you in that dynamic, that the person who funded the film, I was like, okay, I know you've been dying to see something. Let me show you this scene. And he was like, oh, this is great. I'm really excited. I said, no, the rest of the movie's different. You know, there's a lot of different tones, but it really was great. So know that you also sort of kicked off the first viewing of the film
great.
too, which
I
was
was surprised at our very first screening that we did in New York, how much the audience hated my character. They were literally reacting. And I think it's a testament to just the entire cast is so good. And I hadn't seen the work, the relationship between, you know, them as a couple. You were really rooting for them as a couple, which, because I read the script from Marley's perspective, I was like, oh, he's not happy, you know, and you know, so I was surprised as an audience member, like really rooting for them. And then Marley kind of cuts in and you're like, oh no, she doesn't belong. And it really stands out. But yeah, I guess that's a good sign when the audience is along for the ride in that way.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we had a cast and crew screening a while back here in New York. And what was fun about that is that while it was cast and crew, a lot of the people who were there were background talent. So they had absolutely no idea what the film was about at all. They had seen their scene, but like if you're in the high school shooting the documentary stuff, you really have no idea what it's about, or if they were background in the cafe scene where you were in film, no idea. And so the people were talking back to the screen and making audible noises, which we sort of miss, I think, a little bit in these virtual screenings. You don't get to hear all the, no, this should not have happened, that you get in that audience. And yeah, that was really fun to watch how they responded to Marley, for sure. Yeah, it was great. All right, so Nile, let's talk a little bit about playing Malcolm. You know, and you taking that role and you seeing it now, and between, say, now when you took the role, do you feel any differently about the character? Have you changed your viewpoint on him, having played him and having seen him on screen?
That's a great question. I just feel more and more grateful at the opportunity that I was able to play this role, being, you know, where we are in the world right now, to be honest. And it just makes me, it makes me just have more respect for Malcolm's character, you know, and just in general. Like, even, you know, we were kind of talking about this last time, going back and watching, there's just different things that you see each time, and it, you know, it just hits you differently, you know, each time that you watch it. And I think it's just a matter of like the you know, I just feel, for me, it's just a great deal of respect, you know, for just for the character Malcolm, and you know, looking at where he comes from. It's just, I've said many times, like, I really believe passionately in the message of this film. So me being able to help tell that story, it's just, it feels really, really good, you know? And yeah, I just feel like I see more and more of myself kind of in the character each time that I see this film, you know, because even me finding ways to cope with what's going on right now, and stuff like that, you know, I look back to this film as a reminder, you know, almost as what I can really do with my art, how important, you know, art is for us. So it's really been just, I feel like, very, very encouraging for me as a young Black actor to be a part of this film and be able to tell the story of this character. So yeah, you know, I'm just grateful every time I watch the film, you know.
Can I ask where you think Malcolm would be if he hadn't been murdered?
I think he would be very successful, you know. I feel like he would, you know, regardless, you know, if you know, Phil in the movie had taken him under his wing or not, that, you know, from being around Phil and just seeing the way that he works, with that inspiration and that passion that he would have taken away, he would have just done something great with it, you know, regardless. Because I remember we were talking about like just like the culture and how much talent, you know, is in boroughs like that Malcolm comes from. So I feel like regardless, he would have just he would have just you know kept going up. So yeah.
It seems that, you know, Malcolm, the way that Chisa wrote him, you know, already understands the world in such a big way. You know, when your line says you couldn't do any of this without all the me's in the world, right? Like just thinking about what he would have done, thinking about those things, or how he's flipping in that scene with the camera, and offering a new way of being an artist, which I think, what a loss. I mean, it's a loss for Malcolm as a human and as a person, but also in terms of pushing artistry in that way, like changing the narrative in a deep structural way. And that would have been beyond fascinating.
Mhm. Exactly.
Yeah. And it makes me think, so a little while ago, I went to something at BAM. It was a really great dinner, and I happened to sit next to a very well-heeled documentary film couple. She's a producer, he's a filmmaker. I told them about the film. I'm not sure the log line went over super, super well with them. And she turned to him and said, "Would you ever put down the camera?" And without any hesitation, he said, "No, no." And she talked about producing a film and filming bodies washing up on a water, that had people who were refugees who had died, and how they had asked the filmmaker, who turned away for a second, "Why did you turn away?" It was, you know, tough, because I think it was hard to have this conversation with people who were so entrenched that this is the only way you can do it. And I'm thinking about that, and I wanted to ask you, both Chisa and Carra, about that, you know, and what is responsibility of the artist. But I think you have that real moment too, Carra, in the film, where it's such a beautiful moment where the way that you play it, not what happens in it, but the way you play it, where you ask to see Malcolm's murder. And you're really deeply in that moment. That's what you, as the documentary filmmaker, want to do. And then you sort of back away. So I'm curious how that felt to play that particular moment. And then Chisa, also in writing this, like, you know, this idea of this question of responsibility and ethics, and how that plays into where we're at right now.
Yeah, it was a very complex moment to explore. Um, and I guess my approach, because I didn't want to judge my character and to justify it for myself, um, because we live in this era where there are so many hashtags and so many videos and so many dash cams and so much violence against Black bodies, where I was sort of exploring, what if this woman, this Black woman, is desensitized to it? You know, some of us still, you know, can't watch because it's just so heartbreaking. But what if she's like, well, somebody's got to do it, and somebody's got to tell the story, even though she is exploiting, you know, but in her eyes, I was like, what if she's just seen it so much, where in the way that she justifies it is to, somebody's got to get the story out. It might as well be us,
Mhm.
you know, in that moment. So that was what I was working with, to try to not villainize her.
Mhm. You're spot on. Um, I I intended Marley to be sort of like like I mean, it helps that Marley is of color, right? Because
Mhm.
here he's got this woman of color who is basically giving him permission to keep his distance, right? And to maintain his objectivity, or you know, his remove, right?
Mhm.
Um, whereas I don't know, and I think my slip was showing a little bit in this film because like, you know, like when Leslie asks him, you know, he says like, "Well, I'm not God and I'm not a cop, like I'm a documentary filmmaker, like I'm a documentarian." And she says to him, "Well, you're human too, ain't you?" Right? Um, because it's my firm belief that art, like, we're supposed to tap into humanity. We're supposed to, present something. We're supposed to present humanness. We're supposed to embrace it. We're supposed to lift it up, right? And documentary filmmakers are like kind of a bizarre breed, man, because there is this sense that like you have to shut off that part of yourself in order to like capture the humanity. You have to like sacrifice your humanity in order to capture it. And I just feel like that's, I mean, not to knock documentary filmmakers, so I don't mean to do that, but wonder um I do wonder about that mentality and how damaging it can be, not just for a subject but for the actual filmmaker. I think about that photographer all the time, Kevin Carter. Yeah. Kevin Carter, who took that photo of the young is it Uganda, the young African
Starving.
Sudanese.
Yeah.
totally emaciated baby just sort of sitting in the dust, and there's a vulture just hovering behind her, just waiting. And he said in an interview, like, yeah, I waited 20 minutes for the vulture to spread its wings, but it never did. So I took the picture. And then he won the Pulitzer. And then he committed suicide. Right? So it's like, it has to do some damage. It has to fuck you up a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's what Leslie really fights against in that scene. I mean, there are a couple of lines as you were saying that, like where she questions Phil's humanity. Aren't you a person? Like, that's part of it. Like, I don't care if you're a documentary filmmaker. Where is you as a person? How do we relate? And then there's also that line about doesn't see what is it about happy ass lives? That basically not filming anything. Yeah, that's not what documentary filmmakers are doing, or filming like Black Joy or anything of that nature. And it's like, well, why not? Like, why is it all just, and she's questioning Phil, like, why did you choose Malcolm? And I think about that scene with you, Nile, realizing kind of why Phil chose you and where he wanted to keep you when you ask him to you know, change it up. And can you talk a little bit about just shooting that scene and what it was like being in Harlem that day? I mean, I can tell a little bit of an anecdote about a disruption on set in a little while, which was quite funny and genuine. Or I can just share it now. So we're shooting the scene. It's one of the most emotional scenes in the film. It's where Malcolm has the camera and Jason's there. We're in Harlem, East Harlem. And there are three guys that just keep sort of wandering by set and like keep coming back. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's that dude. I don't think they said Jason's name. They're basically like, it's that guy that slept with a lot of women in American Pie, but they didn't say it so cleanly. Let's just put it that way. And they're yelling it for like 10 blocks to hear. And they're so hyped and excited and everything. And Jason was so gracious. He went over, he took some selfies with them. And then he said, hey, we've got a job to do. Do you mind like letting us work? And to those guys' credit, after getting the selfies and chatting with him, they never bothered us again. Like, we got to shoot the whole scene. Like, I was just so amazed, because I think if I were wanting something from somebody, I'm not sure I would have shut up. Like, they totally did. They were like, okay, man, we got our selfies and let's go. Like, they were done. And it was just a funny thing, because here we are in this very emotional scene, and then just dealing with the realities of shooting on the street in New York and people recognizing Jason, which it was amazing. Anyway. Yeah. So go ahead. So tell us about that day. If you want to add anything to that story.
Jason is just such an honor to work with. He's just such a great energy, and just the rhythm between the scenes with us was it was so much fun. Like, I could do it, every day. No matter what the emotion of the scene was, it was just he made it easy. But and also just being back in Harlem in general, like it felt like home. Because I only lived in Harlem for about 3 months as a baby, but my parents got me out, and tried to get me to experience as much culture as I could, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I feel like for that scene in particular, it was just really a matter of, for me, it was kind of finding that innocence and really understanding, because I feel like, you know, when Malcolm, you see throughout the movie when uh Jason brings up Malcolm being in the gang, he always calls it a brotherhood, you know, and it's just a matter of finding that. I feel like, you know, even with me, when you're young and sometimes you just don't have that much stuff going on, you're just looking for a thrill. You're just looking for something to keep you active, and especially for somebody coming from Malcolm's community, you're just kind of looking for something to do, something
Mhm.
that just something, you know, and I feel like really having to look back at that, and you know, with Jason having to tell him on top of that, now that he has a new love that he's found, a new inspiration, and then saying that if he wants to go back to those uh, that place that he depends on, his brotherhood, that gang, and you know, saying that they wouldn't accept him, that's that's some really tough shit, you know, especially when, you know, I have friends, you know, of mine that come from all over. Most kids that actually went to my high school, you know, came from New York City. And I met, you know, I've been very fortunate, you know, to know a lot of talented people that I, you know, went to high school with, and, you know, went to elementary school with even. And, but, you know, I just feel like even for me, that was just so, for me, being able to hold the camera and have my own perspective, you know, to the filmmaker's point of view, was very powerful to me, because, you know, even with me, like, I wanna grow up to go, you know, make my own films and direct my own movies. So it was a very powerful day, but it was just so much fun, you know, like, I really enjoyed, you know, every day, every day on the set. You know, each part of filming this was it was a learning experience for me, and, you know, I took away so much from it. So yeah, you know.
Some of my filmmaking friends who watched the previous screening said to me about that moment that they were really touched when your character says, "Can you show me? I think I can see art in you." And it's just a line that they still sort of weep on a week or 10 days later, that they're still thinking about that moment and just how beautiful it was written, but also how beautifully you played it too, Nile.
Right.
Yeah.
The way that scene was shot too, like, I remember we were talking about this on the first screening, with the transition, where Malcolm claps and it snapped to him holding the camera. That gives me goosebumps every single time that I watch that scene. So
Great. Yeah. And that's the perfect time to sort of do a shout out to not only our camera team, our cinematographer, Darren Joe, but also what was really great was that snap and that sound, I think that gives it the full effect, was by Eric Brown, who's our sound designer. And he did some really beautiful sculpting then, and also during the knocking as Anjanue's character comes and we're waiting and hearing some of that, and then also some really great work in the fight scene, which is still hard for me, even though we don't see it, just hearing it like that. And with you're the vision of you on screen, it's still hard for me to watch that. And you know, I was part of who made it, so I can imagine what it's like for audiences. She says somebody had asked, and I know you talked a little bit about the screenplay, the transition from play to screenplay, but were there anything that really, like, formally going from play to screenplay that you felt was really necessary in telling the story? Anything really important for that difference? I just saw that in the comments.
I think formally, form wise, or are we talking?
Yeah, so it says, can you speak a bit about the process of adapting from a stage play to a screenplay, and creatively what adjustments needed to be made? So
Well, like I said, it took place on a unit set in the play, so it was really important to get out of Phil's house and into the world. And I really wanted to get um, the sense that he is welcome in the neighborhoods where he wants to shoot. Where his new project is. He's going back to Harlem. Like folks there trust him. And he has a rapport. He's very likable. He's seemingly a very generous dude, right? And I really wanted to set that up, and I think getting him out of the context of his house was really important in order to be able to do that. And luckily, film it's all about that. Jumping from scene to scene. What else? I guess another thing that I had to, I'll just say that I'm glad that I didn't have to think about, because I'm not the director and I'm not and I'm not Darren. Something that I'm glad that I didn't have to figure out was how to make it clear that the subject, like the title of the film, is, the meaning changes, of course, but like always Phil, I wanted to when it was translated to film, not lose this feeling that you get in a live theater space when there are like 100 people sitting in a dark room, sitting in a dark room and staring at an actual physical actor on stage. Like it's so unmistakable, like, okay, he is the subject, right? And I just, I'm continue to be blown away by how y'all managed to really keep the focus on him in a way that feels theatrical. I don't know. And it's kind of magical how you did it.
Thank you. I mean, I think about that. That's a lot what I love about some plays, where you feel like the vice grip is turning tighter and tighter and tighter on that character. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of, I think, what we hoped when Darren and I would talk about it, what we hoped would be how it reads for Phil and Jason. I think the things that were difficult about this piece, and you're writing it, is that, I mean, in some ways there's non-linearity in it, back and forth, different timelines, different stories. Also, it breaks form and structure. It's not a typical 3-act necessarily, like some structured screenplays are, which I love personally. But I think some of the difficulty was really, we're using 4 different cameras to tell this story. The main camera that captures most of the action, the camera that shot all of the footage of Malcolm and the documentary footage, which I have to give out a shout out to my friend Kirsten Kelly, who actually shot an Emmy award-winning film on that camera about teenagers in Chicago experiencing homelessness. And so it felt really authentic to use that camera. But then we have Leslie's camera that she's filming. And then we also have the camera that is shooting Kwame, because it would be a new camera system if you're shooting for HBO than what he used for himself in shooting The Price of Brotherhood. And trying to put those 3 together, I think Darren and the whole team with that guidance, because that was super great. And also Chisa, when you saw the first cut and we were watching that scene we've talked a lot about with Malcolm, you were like, oh, let's stay on Jason a little bit more through the lens of that camera. And I do think that that is such the right decision. And it really, really makes him squirm, and watch us squirm, see him squirm as he tries to get out of that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that that's very true. Jocelyn asked about the suspense of the film and how that came to be. Some people have called it a psychological thriller. Some have said it's a philosophical thriller. I mean, I think there are all sorts of different thrillers it could be. You want to speak to that, Chisa?
Oh, I was just saying, ooh, I like this philosophical thriller. I don't think I've ever heard that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. My sister's friend felt like the final scene is a complete philosophical thriller. Mm-hmm. Where is it going to go? And and just
Who's gonna come out on top?
and who's going to come out on top. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the thriller aspect, obviously we wanted that, but that's the other thing about your writing, is that there are so many things to thread. We've got Marley, we've got Jess, we've got Malcolm, we've got all these different things, but then we have Leslie coming to the door, obviously, and we wanted that to feel suspenseful and for you to be a little disconcerted why it happens, but also not to make you forget the human quality of all of these people as the movie is moving along. Because I think if we don't care about Malcolm, if we don't care in some way about Phil and Jess, as you said, Carra, like if we don't care about those things, then what does it really matter what happens in the end? I mean, it does. As an exorcism, we know that art chews up Black and brown bodies in ways that it absolutely should not. So yes, but in terms of our investment in the film, so it was really trying to balance, to my mind, those things of keeping the human perspective, keeping that heart, but also making it where like, ooh, what's going to happen next? So a little known fact is that we also shot on what might be the coldest day in the history
Oh
of
yeah.
the world. Like it was so cold, like it's beyond. And these were like interstitial scenes that we were getting with Marley. There was the funeral scene with Caleb. And right now I have to give a shout out to our background talent who came to do that funeral scene. I mean, they're great. And when it looks like they're crying, they're just really cold, like super, super cold. Like they didn't have to act that they were miserable because they were miserable. We were all miserable, and shout out to the crew for making it. But what I love about that day, and it was a short day, I mean, like 10 to 3 shooting, but even being out there for like 2 minutes, it was like, I hope you all like cryotherapy, because if you don't, it's going to be super miserable. And we had soup. We tried to do everything to make everybody warm, but it was the coldest day of the year. It wasn't possible. But every time I look at that and I see our background talent, I think about how blessed we were, not only for our actors, but also the people who showed up for this film that did not know us. I met all of those people off of Facebook, off of Craigslist. That's where I put the ad. And they actually showed up. So a big thank you to them, because that's when I knew this film had some magic, is when it was like negative, 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 and people show up to do an outdoor scene, even if they weren't out there that long. It was super, super amazing. So Carra, I was gonna ask you, what do you remember about that day, if anything, other than you want to erase it from your memory?
No, I think the dread of it was worse than the actual shoot. It's like you get an early call time, and then you hear on the news like it's going to be however much below zero, the coldest day in New York, and everyone's talking about it. And I'm like, I have to shoot outside today. How is this going to go? So the buildup and the anticipation was like crazy. But then I got there, and it was just I mean, this is a testament to the set, that the tone that you created on set. Everything was super efficient, and everyone was just working together to get the shots that we needed, and to make sure we had hand warmers, and they literally came and put blankets over us. And I think Jason might have had a car, so we were able to warm up inside of the car between a couple takes. But it ended up being this really fun adventure, and then it was over. It wasn't even like a super long day on set. So it ended up being really fun, and I had pictures to show everybody. It was fine. I made a cool post about it.
You did. Well, yeah, as long as we get a cool post out of it, that's what
right.
I now have, I think, 6 heating blankets as a result from that shoot. I still have them, so if I get cold at any point. But it was really, really cold, and so and thank you to the crew. What was really great about that day was it was short, and I think we were supposed to wrap at 3, and at 5:30 most of the crew had still not left holding, and the person who was managing that day said to me, oh, Lanie, what's going on? I was like, we just really like each other. Like it's really cold outside. Like we don't want to go outside again, but beyond that, we just all really like each other. So it ended up being quite beautiful. And what I love is that you can see some of your breath a little bit, but you can't tell. It's the scene of you and Jason in the back of the van. It's the scene of you outside the house. You can't tell how cold it was. Like it doesn't look it on film. So I'm glad that was not captured, which is good. That's fun. So Chisa, what is your hope for this movie? Like, what would you like to see happen with the subject?
What would I not like to see? I just want wide distribution. I want I want obviously like Black and brown people to see it, feel
Yes.
validated, and feel like someone sees them.
Mhm.
Um, but I also want um, you know, I want all the Karens in the world to, to see it.
Mhm.
Also, the Karens and the Kevins. Um, it's not right just to pick on the white lady. Um, so yeah, that would be great. And also liberal people, libs, progressives who, maybe think of racism in the sort of broad strokes terms of like people who just drop the N word every other word or every
Right.
other, sentence, and um, you know, tell Native Americans to go back to their country or whatever, It's like
Mhm.
just dumb shit like that. That's not all that racism is, and that's not the only form of white supremacy, and it's the way in which a lot of white people, and particularly liberals, actually will only view people of color in terms of their struggle,
Mm.
or see us as charity cases, um which is like almost just as dehumanizing, you know as having somebody spit in your face and call you the N-word. um I mean, there's just so much. There are just so many microaggressions and um, erasures that happen on a regular basis that I think are present in the film, and that if you watch it and it gives you an icky feeling, or you think you might recognize that behavior in yourself, to maybe like quietly, if shamefully, change that behavior. That's
Yeah, and
my hope for the film.
that's awesome. I think I mentioned that when we did that screening for one of the people who was a background talent, very liberal white woman did write to me and said the beauty was in seeing Phil's blind spots.
Mm,
She recognized some in herself.
mm,
And I was like, that's the hope, right? Is that this film sort of offers us a mirror to look into and to peer into, and particularly me as a white woman to think like, wow, what are the things that I do on a daily basis? Or and how do I change those, or how do I change my thinking around that? I think it's, that part is really part of why I was so excited to do this film, because so many films I see it where they make a white person like so like mustachio twirling awful that you're like, oh, that's not me. I don't do that. So it lets us off the hook. And I think your writing doesn't let anybody off the hook. Like it really pushes everybody to look at themselves. And I think that's a great gift. And that's why I also hope it gets out in as wide a distribution as it possibly can, and that we can have more discussions like this around it. Um, Nile, I see you shaking your hand. What, or nodding. What would you like to see for the film?
I would love to see a lot of young people tuning into this as well. It's very heavy to a certain degree in that aspect, but I feel like it's needed. Just hopping off of everything that Chisa was saying, I would just love to see people tuning in from everywhere. Just like we're seeing with these protests. Tune in, watch the film with an open mind, open heart, and learn something new. You know,
Yeah.
can you can't start healing before you move the splinter, right? So watch the film, watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somebody just asked, do we feel that the film, let me see how exactly it was said, if the movie got a whole new dimension to the latest events. Does anybody want to speak to that? Like if the time that we're in right now specifically has changed the viewing for you of the film, or what's in there?
it's it's fun because I remember just like with you were kind of asking me the same thing like about my viewpoints and the character Malcolm, and for me it's just the same thing. It just makes me notice that the accuracy in the message in this film, and just how important it is, because it's literally it's too spot on, if you ask me, you know. So it's just a matter of uh just taking notice to what it is that we're trying to say, and I feel like it's for any filmmaker, for any other film in this festival as well, like people are we're doing this stuff for a reason, and it's uh just tune in, and keep your and learn as much as you can. That's one thing that I've been taking with me, watching all these events go down, and tuning back into the to the film. It's all very, very, very clear to me. It's it's something we should all be in tune with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think even Dax said, Chisa, you're so ahead and on time.
Mm.
I think that's beautiful. I would like, can we have that for the poster? I mean, seriously, right?
Well, I think, well, was weird actually, well, not weird, but like the time did actually change the script for me, and the catalysts, plural, were of course like all the video footage of these unarmed Black people being murdered. Um, so like that's one catalyst, and then the other catalyst was Aunjanue Ellis, who I wish she were here talking with us, because before she even agreed to take on the role of Leslie, um, we had to sit down, and she was um, curious about the ending of the original screenplay, um, in which I had, and this was a sort of a holdover from the play that I wrote like 10 years ago now, right? So she said, originally, Leslie, once Phil starts, crying, and he realizes what he's done and he's apologizing, and he tells her, Malcolm's last words. Originally, she reached for his hand and just held it, and they just sort of cried together, right? And Anjanue was like, mm-mm. I'm not feeling that. And I said, okay, speak on that. And she was like, I just think we're beyond that now. I think where, we need to be telling Black women that it's okay, Black women who have been wronged in that very particular and tragic way. Like, I think we need to be telling them that it's okay that you're angry. It's okay if you're angry, and it's okay to not forgive. And, like, that's not your work. You shouldn't have to bear that burden on top of losing a loved one and, dealing with the indignity of that. And I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. She's like, yeah, no, it's their work. It is the work of the offenders, like the people who are perpetrating, the violence. Like this is their problem. They need to take responsibility. They need to live with it the way we have lived with it. And I was like, you are fucking right. And that did change. It put a whole different window on really the entire script for me. So times they are changing. Black folks are not feeling as forgiving as once we did. Yeah, and I something's got to change. And
Yeah,
I hope that this film can be a part of that change.
Absolutely.
absolutely. And yeah, I remember sitting with Anjanue in that diner and going through the ends. And I mean, this is what you love. I mean, with all of these actors, great questions, wonderful understanding of their characters. And when she sat down and was like, this is what I'm feeling, this is it. And then we got into the room with Jason and read through it, and it was like, yep, it's got to be left where it's so, where you're uncomfortable. And also, you know, choosing that shot. I'll give a shout out to somebody also mentioned, our production designer, Chantal de Montreal, who did a fantastic job on the film. I mean, for our small budget, made it look like 10 times the budget that we had. But, you know, she also helped us with that final shot. Like, we were trying to figure out, where do we put it? Where do we put it? And then it's like, oh, we've never looked from above. And so it leaves it in this discomforting place of what's next, and how is that solved? And I think all of those things really did. And they seem at the moment like they're not these huge shifts, like not a huge scene, but they are a huge shift. They do change it in a really momentous way. Yeah. So let's see. Let's just ask, what was your favorite memory from the shoot?
Oh, that's hard.
Okay. I know it's going to be hard to choose one for sure. Nile, you want to go first, or unless Chisa's got it?
I'm trying to think.
I know, because there were like so many good days.
Yeah.
I was ecstatic every time I showed up. Right?
And this for me, you know, it being like, you know, my first lead role in the film as well. Like it was just, the whole thing was such an amazing experience for me. But I do definitely think, just, you know, the scene with Jason and me also getting to hold the camera. That's one of my favorite memories, you know. Just the chemistry, you know, even me not, you know, knowing Jason for that long, it was very, 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 there was a lot of power, I feel like, in that scene and in that moment. And yeah, that's definitely one. There's like, I still have so many, you know, like
So many.
yeah.
Oh, I know. The day my husband showed up on set.
Oh.
That was a good day for me. It's always so nice when he shows up to support, and you know,
Jason's wife too. That was I love
to
Jason.
like see
Oh,
me
yeah.
in my element, you know, and I felt, I don't know, I felt really good, because there was this whole like army of people around, because like I wrote a script, which is crazy.
And that was actually the same day that we shot that scene with Nile and Jason.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was that day. Yeah, that was great. That was great. What about you, Carra? Any special memory from the set?
I think the scene where when Jess comes home and I'm feeding him the food, that was a lot of fun, because that was also the first time that I met Anabelle, and like she was able to but you could just feel the awkwardness, and like, this is my house, this is my boyfriend or my fiance, and like, what are you doing here? And it was just so fun to use that energy. And she was great, but that was a lot of fun to just like make myself at home in her kitchen and
Yeah, totally. Yes, so frito.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I mean, every day was my favorite day. It was a dream to direct and to get to work on this. I will say I felt lucky on our second day when we were shooting the documentary scenes with kids in a high school, shooting at 8:30 in the morning in the middle of the Bronx, not super, super close to the subway. And it was a nor'easter, like the rainiest day, most miserable day. And I woke up and I said, I wouldn't go to this shoot if I weren't directing it. Like, it's a really horrific day. And when I got off the subway again, the background talent were a mixture. Some people we knew, but mostly didn't. People coming from I keep saying Facebook, from Craigslist again. And when I saw two of them at 7:30 getting off the train, I was like, oh, this is a pretty good sign, because I was very worried that we would get there, we would have 5 students, and that's all we would have to shoot. It would look like the worst school in the world. Like, everybody's, you know, there's a lot of truancy or something, and how are we going to explain this? And everybody showed up. Like, I could not believe it. And it was at that moment that it's day 2, it's really rainy, everybody was in good spirits, everybody, despite being wet, I mean, they hit their marks, they were so great, we wrapped early. It was at that moment I was like, okay, I don't want to jinx it right now, but this is going so well. And it continued to do that. Like, we actually wrapped the whole shoot early. So it was like, oh, okay, there's something special here. The crew was really vibing. I'm still talking to many of the people who played there. They're sending me their tapes, their auditions and stuff. Like, I love them. I love that they showed up for us in that way. And I'll never forget that, ever. I mean, every moment was special, but that's when I knew. I was like, okay, maybe something's on our side in terms of shooting this. And you definitely need that when you're making a true independent film. So yeah, I'm gonna see if there are any more questions. Let's see. All right. No, I think that's pretty much it. We've got a lot of really, really good compliments, which is great. I just want to say to people, we are in another film festival this Tuesday, a drive-in on Long Beach Island. So for social distancing, who knew this film would ever be in a drive-in? I know, it's the Lighthouse International Film Festival, and I'm very excited. There are a lot of really wonderful other films playing in this festival, so it's very much an honor to be a part of it. We know that we're in at least 4 other festivals and counting. We'll be able to announce more coming up. When these actually happen and if they can happen in person, we don't know yet. Nothing's in our control, but we're trying to get the word out about the film. So if you can, follow us on social media, we promise not to spam you too much, but we're hoping to have conversations and partner with organizations also to continue these conversations, because all of us made this film because we believe in its message, what it has to say. And I think more conversations around it to unpack people's feelings and takes on it are really, really important and needed at this time. And, also I just want to say a big shout out to the Art of Brooklyn Film Festival, because they've been really great to us. They've been wonderful. I've enjoyed personally all the other films that I've seen. They've resonated in deep and profound ways. And yeah, just, keep in touch with us. We're at The Subject Film on Twitter and on Instagram. And then we're The Subject Movie NY on Facebook. Had to do a little bit different there, things were taken and whatnot. Is there anything last that y'all want to say?
Just thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Yes,
Share.
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, please keep in touch. And also, if you have other pieces of art that you think are in conversation with the subject or that we could be in conversation with, please let us know, because that's, we made the film not like, oh, we're making this huge blockbuster. We made it so that it could start conversations and be used in its best and most plentiful form to really dive deep into all the things that Chisa somehow packed into a film script in 2 hours. I still can't believe she did it, but she did. So thank you. All right. Well, good night.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Ah.
Bye. Thank you. All right. I'll see y'all soon.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Bye.